What's going on YouTube? This is Ribo back at the bench, and today I have another head-to-head knife review. This time comparing the large Sebenza 21, this is the Insingo micarta version, against the Umnumzaan, which I recently picked up. So really excited for this. I haven't done a head-to-head in a while, at least not a true one, so kind of excited to get back into that. Let me just go over the categories. I lost my little paper, so I just wrote this out. So the categories: pocket clip, scales, overall size, that considers lots of different things. All of these are fairly subjective. Ergonomics, action, detent, blade, steel, lock system, and the intangibles category. As always, I don't really prep these, so I have no idea who the winner will be. I'm just gonna go through this kind of one by one and give my thoughts. I will try to do every category. Some of them may not be applicable just because it's, same brand and similar knife. So we'll kind of see where it takes us. All right, so for starters, let's start with the pocket clip. Obviously these are both the same maker, same pocket clip. And there would be a difference sometimes between a large Reeve pocket knife, kind of depending on if you were a 21 or a 31 Sebenza. You would have a slightly different pocket clip placement. As it is, the Umnumzaan and the 21 have the same clip placement, so I'm not going to do this category. This is the lesser of the two clip placements, in my opinion. There are benefits and kind of pros and cons for each clip layout. In my opinion, though, especially on the Umnumzaan here, it does produce some problems, but won't go into that right now. Anyway, so we're going to call that a dead tie. Scales. So this one I will try to make, I guess, a selection because you do have two different scale patterns here, and you have really two knives that are not the plain Jane version of the Reeve either. So you have the micarta here, which are the inlays. You also have different options for wood and whatnot on the inlay patterns here. And then you have the crosshatch over here. And honestly, I've used both of these. And so this is going to be totally subjective. I don't know if there's really a practical one's better than the other. So I'm just going to give my opinion. And that is, I love both. I think the crosshatch is actually very nice. I think it's, visually it wasn't my favorite thing in the world when I first saw it. But practically, I think that the crosshatch actually does give you a fair amount of traction and does give you something over the plain Jane. However, I am going to say that the micarta inlays are the best thing for me practically, probably and visually, for really two reasons practically. So number one, the inlays give you a little bit of a bigger and beefier knife. So it does give you something else to grab onto. And for me, I have definitely noticed that over this. Both are comfortable, but for me, this just fills out the grip fairly nicely. Secondly, and practically, let me bring on my plain Jane 31. And you can see all of those snail trails right there. That is because all of that exposed titanium is just getting hit all the time. Now, it doesn't look terrible, and I like it. But one of the benefits that I have noticed of the micarta and of the inlays in general is that it just absorbs a lot of those scratches, and so you tend to not really get stuff beat up on the rest of the knife. You can see the pocket clip for sure is all beat up, but apart from that, it doesn't look too bad. Now this Umnumzaan is fairly new, and I have been very careful with it. But over time, you're going to get a lot more snail trails on here. It's just a visual thing, doesn't really matter. But I have noticed that in addition to a nicer grip for me on the micarta version there, for me, I think personally, just the preservation of that, I'm going to go with the winner being the Sebenza micarta. All right, overall size. This is really, really close. These two knives are very, very, very close in size. The Umnumzaan is slightly larger, but to be honest, it's not so much that you can really tell. So I'm personally not going to make I'm not going to make a choice between the two. They're way too close for me to really even tell. I think the Zaan is a beefier knife, and it does feel that way. but not in a bad way. It definitely feels beefier. You can see the blade stock is a little bit thicker. I believe that these titanium handles are a bit thicker, but then you've got, you know, the inlays on this one that beef it up, you know, a little bit. This is a little bit heavier. But to be honest, I haven't noticed anything wrong with the Umnumzaan. While it's a little bit bigger, a little bit beefier, I haven't noticed anything in the pocket. And so it's really just too close for me to call. So I'm not going to make a. Sorry, that's the shop pup getting into trouble back there. So sorry about that. All right, next up, ergonomics. This one to me is a super easy win for the Sebenza. So the Umnumzaan here has some really interesting things going on, and I'll talk more about this in my full review. But you've got a lot of contouring here. You have access to the lock bar, which kind of creates the small finger choil up here. Then you've got somewhat similar thing right here where you've got another little cutout there. And I think the knife is fairly comfortable, but it definitely forces your hand, and it took me by surprise. Kind of took some getting used to. For me, the Sebenza has just been a gold standard in ergos. Just simplicity. It's not forcing your hand anywhere. It's giving you lots of room. And so for me, the choice there is fairly easy. So I'm gonna go Sebenza there. What do we have next? The action of the detent. So if you're not familiar, the Umnumzaan has, I don't know, the major complaint of the Umnumzaan is it is fairly difficult to open. When you first get it, you sit there and you have a lot of difficulty trying to open this because you're used to opening a Sebenza by pushing out. As you get used to it, and of course on camera, I'm having some difficulty just because my hand's kind of in a weird position. As you get used to it, it's not bad. It's still not comfortable necessarily. The Umnumzaan you can also flick out like that, which I know Chris Reeves, they don't like you doing that. That's an easy way to open the knife. So the deployment is a little bit funky, and in general, the action is just a little bit tricky to get to know. And so I was tempted to just say Sebenza all the way for that. That was my first inclination as I'm kind of sitting here thinking through the knife, because that's just so easy and it's so smooth. However, I'm going Zaan on this one, and that's really for one reason. So I have a 31, small 31 Sebenza. I have the 21 here, and I have the Umnumzaan, and then I also have the Menandi, and I also have a Nyala. I have a problem. But what the Zaan here has shown me is that I absolutely love the ceramic ball detent lockup. You can read about this, you can go watch other videos, but it's a different lock system than the 21, and you have just the ceramic ball up there that's making contact, and that's the only thing you need to push over to disengage. Otherwise, it's completely smooth. It makes this knife incredibly smooth. Now, practically, is there any benefit to that? You could make an argument that there is. I mean, they would certainly do that. I don't know. I know that I love it. I know that I love the smoothness. I love it on my 31. And the 21's lockup is great, but you hear that. You just have a bit more going on. It's a classic frame lock, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's incredibly smooth. It's really awesome. I love it. But owning the Umnumzaan has shown me that I really love the new ceramic ball lock system. And so for me, that alone puts the Zaan out ahead of the 21. Next up, blade. And this one's going to be a little funky as well because there's so many different versions that you can get of each of these knives. You see I'm having trouble deploying it right now just because I'm kind of in a weird position. So for the purpose of this review, I'm just reviewing what's on the table in front of me. And that is the drop point Umnumzaan and the Insingo Sebenza. And so it's a little bit of an unfair comparison. It would be great to have a drop point versus a drop point, but that's not what we have. So this is what I'm going to review. So real quick on the Umnumzaan here, you have a really crisp, nice little, I don't know, shaping up here. Really nice. Practical, makes for a good piercer. It definitely gives it more of a tactical look. Almost harpoonish, but not quite, but very sharp right there. Really crisp, really nice detailing on that drop point. And then you have this kind of funky, kind of pattern, you know, right here. which I'm not going to get into, but it does give the blade a little bit of a different look, almost a harpoonish look, like I said, but not necessarily your classic drop point. Now, I think the Tanto version of this blade, or of this knife, looks really excellent. And then on the Insingo here, you have a similar thing up here, not quite as crisp, not quite as sharp, not quite as dramatic. But I've talked about this blade quite a bit, kind of that sheep's foot style, really, really practical. This one for me is going to be also an easy choice. I kind of wanted to give an overview before I made this choice, but this one to me is a very easy choice for the Sebenza, and it's not for the reason that I thought it was at first. When I first got the knife, I thought, well, I much prefer this blade to this because this is just kind of ugly. Like the classic Sebenza drop point, which I have right here, is, I think, just the most beautiful knife. Like, it's just, I don't know, there's something about it that's just a great looking knife, which doesn't, account for much because you want utility in a knife, but the classic drop point Sebenza is just a great looking knife. This one I thought is not that great looking, but that doesn't really matter. However, what does really matter, at least to me, is the ability of the knife to cut and slice. And you can compare these two side by side, right here, and you can see immediately that the Umnumzaan is quite a stout knife. The spine of this knife is really, really thick. And comparing that to at least the Insingo on the large 21, it is incredibly noticeable when you're using the knife. Now, if you're opening packages and you're doing that kind of thing, you're not really going to notice it. But if you're slicing cardboard, if you are cutting open fruit, if you are using it for, your EDC things on any given day of the month, this knife, at least in my opinion, is going to outperform this blade in almost every respect. And granted, like, these are in some ways two different purposes of a knife. Like, one's definitely more of the tactical, stout thing. And one is more of a utility knife. But for me, I was kind of blown away by how much I enjoyed this blade over this. Not for aesthetics, but for actual cutting tasks. So for me, easy choice on that Insingo. So let me make sure I've got the right, so we skipped pocket clip, we did the scales, size, we skipped Ergo's action detent blade. I'm gonna skip over the steel because both of these are the same steel, so no use in comparing there. Lock system, I've said before, and I gave the Umnumzaan the edge with the action detent, but I'm going to give it the edge for both lock system and the action detent, and that's because the action detent to me is much more smooth, much more enjoyable on it here, but I also think that the lock system is superior. I don't have enough information to know that. I know that they believe that. But I enjoy this lock system. I think it's an upgrade over the classic frame lock. And so that's why I'm giving it the slight edge. Again, nothing wrong with the 21, still fantastic. But I'm gonna give that new ceramic lock the edge there. And then we get to intangibles. So that's really the only category left. And for intangibles, for me, it's going to be fairly easy as well. You can probably tell that from the review, but it's going to be the Sebenza. Look, the Umnumzaan was an interesting knife to me. It was one that never really visually appealed to me, but I always wanted to check it out. And I'm really glad that I was able to pick one up because it's really interesting. At the end of the day, it's just not for me. This is going to be kind of a preview of the actual cutter carry, but the Umnumzaan has a lot of things going for it. It's a very interesting knife, but for me, practically, the Sebenza 21 is far and away the more practical knife that I want in my pocket every day. Really, the things that I love about the Umnumzaan have to do with the new lock interface, and so what that tells me is maybe it's time to upgrade the 21 here to a 31. And so I think that might be what I do with the Zaan here, is just trade up to a 31. Time will tell. But for me, the Sebenza is, at least in my use, far and away the better knife. And so for me, the Sebenza is going to be our winner today. Hope you have enjoyed this head-to-head, and I'll see you next time.